This is completely hopeless, Dr. Margaret Ashford screamed, throwing her teaching materials into her leather briefcase with such violence that colored pencils scattered across the marble floor. She stared down at 10-year-old Daniel Harrison, who sat quietly at his small desk, his gentle eyes focused on a puzzle he'd been working on throughout their entire session. "I've taught gifted children at Harvard for 15 years, and I refuse to waste another second on someone who clearly can't learn." Daniel looked up with innocent confusion, his characteristic features softening with hurt as he watched this distinguished professor storm toward the ornate double doors with zero remorse. The sound of her designer heels echoed through the massive foyer like gunshots, followed by the slam of the front door that seemed to shake the very foundation of the Harrison estate. But here's what Dr. Ashford didn't know. She had no idea who she had just dismissed, or the incredible miracle that was about to unfold. Before we dive into this amazing story, if you stand against prejudice and believe every child deserves respect regardless of their abilities, hit the subscribe button, type yes, and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. This story will change how you see potential in every human being, and you will definitely get a heartwarming reply from us. 10-year-old Daniel Harrison wasn't just any child. Born with Down syndrome to one of America's most powerful families, he had spent his entire life surrounded by people who saw only his limitations. His father, billionaire media mogul Robert Harrison, had built his empire from a small local newspaper in Ohio, eventually owning television networks, publishing houses, and digital platforms that reached millions worldwide. But when it came to his son, Robert felt completely powerless. For 6 long years, Daniel had been passed from tutor to tutor like a problem to be solved. Each specialist arrived with impressive credentials and bold promises, only to leave frustrated and defeated within weeks. What they didn't understand was that Daniel possessed an extraordinary gift that no test could measure. He had an almost magical ability to sense people's true intentions, to connect with those who genuinely cared, and to see beauty in places others overlooked. Daniel spent most of his days in the family's sprawling Connecticut mansion, building intricate structures with blocks and caring for a small vegetable garden his late grandmother had started before her death 2 years earlier. The tomatoes and sunflowers she had planted were the only things that brought him pure joy. He would spend hours in that garden, talking to the plants in his sweet voice, sharing his dreams of one day making his daddy proud. The heartbreaking truth was that Daniel understood far more than anyone realized. He could read simple books, solve complex puzzles that challenged children twice his age, and had an incredible memory for people and places. But years of being treated like he was broken had made him retreat into silence, refusing to perform for people who saw him as a burden rather than a blessing. What made this situation even more tragic was that Robert Harrison had built his entire media empire on stories of human triumph and potential. His networks regularly featured documentaries about overcoming obstacles, his publishing houses released inspirational books, and his digital platforms amplified voices of people who had been underestimated. Robert's closest friends included governors, Supreme Court justices, and international leaders who regularly sought his counsel on matters of social justice. But despite all his success in recognizing and sharing stories of human potential, Robert couldn't seem to reach his own son. The guilt consumed him every single day. He threw millions at the problem, hiring world-renowned specialists and building a state-of-the-art learning center in their home. But nothing worked. Daniel remained withdrawn, and their relationship grew more distant with each failed attempt. Robert's personal assistant had compiled a list of over 70 potential tutors for their next attempt, each more expensive and prestigious than the last. But deep down, the media mogul was losing hope. He spent 20-hour days at his offices, partly to manage his vast empire, but mostly to avoid the painful reminder at home that he was failing as a father. Keisha Williams had been working as a housekeeper for 12 years, juggling multiple jobs to support her 3 children and aging grandmother. At 38, she had weathered hands and tired eyes, but an unbreakable spirit that had carried her through life's harshest storms. She had started her own small cleaning business, Keisha's Care, and had earned a reputation for excellence and trustworthiness among Connecticut's wealthiest families. Keisha's story was one of quiet determination and grace under pressure. Raised in Hartford by a single mother who worked double shifts as a nurse's aide, she had learned early that genuine love and patience could accomplish what money and credentials couldn't. She had always possessed a special connection with children, particularly those who others found difficult or different. Her own daughter had been born with cerebral palsy, and Keisha had spent countless hours learning how to communicate with and encourage her. When Keisha arrived at the Harrison mansion for her regular Friday cleaning, she had no idea that her life was about to change forever. She had been maintaining the home for 8 months, always arriving when Daniel was with his tutors, so their paths had never crossed. But this particular Friday, Daniel was alone in the playroom, having just endured another devastating session with Dr. Ashford. What Keisha didn't initially understand was the extent of the educational war zone that the Harrison home had become. Over the past 4 years, Daniel had encountered every form of prejudice and diminished expectations imaginable. Some tutors spoke to him like he was a toddler, using baby talk despite his 10 years. Others grew impatient when he didn't respond to their rigid teaching methods, labeling him as stubborn or unteachable. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a specialist in developmental disabilities, had lasted 2 months before declaring that Daniel had maximal cognitive limitations. Professor Thomas Bradley from Yale had insisted that Daniel needed to be placed in a residential facility for intensive behavioral modification. Dr. Lisa Chen had spent more time documenting his supposed deficits than actually engaging with him, treating the position as an easy paycheck from a desperate, wealthy family. Each failure had built another brick in the wall around Daniel's tender heart. He had begun to internalize what these educated professionals were saying about him. The bright, curious toddler who had once babbled constantly and explored everything had gradually become silent, retreating into the safety of his blocks and his grandmother's garden. The most devastating incident had occurred just 3 months earlier with Dr. Kevin Mitchell, a behavioral therapist who had tried to use strict punishment protocols to force Daniel to comply with academic tasks. When Daniel had a meltdown after being denied his comfort toy during a lesson, Dr. Mitchell had called him severely impaired and behaviorally disturbed right in front of the household staff. That day, Daniel had hidden in his grandmother's garden shed for hours, refusing to come out even when his father came home. Keisha was quietly organizing the playroom when she heard soft whimpering coming from behind the large toy chest. Following the sound, she discovered Daniel sitting in a corner, tears streaming down his cherubic face as he clutched the broken pieces of a wooden puzzle. The remnants of the project Dr. Ashford had criticized and destroyed in her frustration. "Oh, sweet baby," Keisha said softly, immediately sitting down on the floor at Daniel's level. "What happened to your beautiful puzzle?" Daniel looked up, startled. He wasn't used to adults speaking to him with such genuine warmth and respect. The mean lady said it was stupid. She broke it and said I was wasting time." Keisha carefully gathered the broken pieces, and her heart nearly stopped. Even destroyed, she could see that Daniel had been assembling an incredibly complex 200-piece puzzle of the solar system, something designed for children much older than 10. "Honey, can you show me how this puzzle is supposed to look?" For the next 30 minutes, Keisha and Daniel worked together on the carpet, carefully sorting and organizing the pieces. As they worked, Daniel began to explain each planet, sharing detailed knowledge about their characteristics, distances from the sun, and unique features. His vocabulary was extensive, his understanding sophisticated, and his passion for learning absolutely infectious. "Daniel," Keisha said, her voice filled with genuine amazement, "you know more about space than most adults I know. You're not just smart, you're brilliant. This puzzle would challenge kids twice your age, and you were doing it perfectly." For the first time in months, Daniel's face lit up with a smile that seemed to illuminate the entire room. Not the forced, polite smile he gave to doctors and tutors, but a genuine expression of joy and pride that revealed the beautiful soul within. If you believe that Dr. Ashford was completely wrong to break Daniel's puzzle and crush his spirit, type justice in the comments. Tell us what you would have done if you had witnessed such cruelty toward a child with special needs. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss stories like this that celebrate the incredible potential in every child. Meanwhile, across the state, in his glass tower overlooking Manhattan, Robert Harrison was in the middle of the most crucial board meeting of the year. Surrounding the mahogany conference table were his top executives, discussing the launch of their new documentary series, highlighting the achievements of people with disabilities. The painful irony wasn't lost on him. He was broadcasting stories of triumph and potential to millions, while failing to recognize the same qualities in his own son. The initial response has been overwhelming, his chief content officer was reporting. "We're looking at the highest ratings in our network's history. The stories are resonating with audiences who are hungry for authentic representation." Robert nodded mechanically, but his thoughts were 3 hours away in Connecticut. Through the panoramic windows, he could see the bustling city below, full of millions of people pursuing their dreams and achieving their goals. All he wanted was to find one person who could see the same potential in Daniel that he showcased in his media empire. His phone vibrated with a message from his household manager. "Dr. Ashford has terminated her contract. Daniel is very upset. We need to discuss alternatives immediately." Robert closed his eyes, feeling the familiar crushing weight of failure settling on his shoulders. He had built a media empire worth billions, employed thousands of people, and influenced public opinion worldwide. But he couldn't reach his own 10-year-old son. What Robert didn't know was that at that very moment, something miraculous was happening in his home. The breakthrough he had been desperately praying for was occurring not through expensive specialists or prestigious programs, but through the genuine love and recognition of a housekeeper who saw Daniel for the remarkable child he truly was. Keisha had completed her regular cleaning duties, but something compelled her to stay in the playroom, where Daniel was now eagerly showing her his collection of educational toys and books. Puzzle after puzzle revealed an incredible intellect that had been dismissed and ignored by dozens of so-called experts. "Daniel," Keisha said thoughtfully, "has anyone ever told you about the great scientists and explorers? About how they learned about space and the planets?" Daniel shook his head enthusiastically. "The teachers only want me to trace letters and count to 10. They say my puzzles are too hard for me." Keisha felt a surge of righteous anger at the missed opportunities, but she kept her voice gentle and encouraging. "Would you like to learn about the real astronauts? About how they discovered all the things you already know about space?" For the next 2 hours, Keisha found herself naturally teaching Daniel about Neil Armstrong, Mae Jemison, and Sally Ride. She told him about the Hubble telescope, the Mars rovers, and the International Space Station. She spoke about how many great discoveries were made by people who thought differently and saw things others missed. Daniel listened with an intensity and engagement that none of his previous tutors had ever witnessed. He asked profound questions, made sophisticated connections between different concepts, and began to see his love of puzzles and patterns not as childish interests, but as the foundation for scientific thinking. "Miss Keisha," Daniel said as she prepared to leave, his voice filled with hope, "will you come back and teach me more about the astronauts tomorrow?" "I'll be here next Friday as always, sweetheart," Keisha replied gently. "No," Daniel said with a determination that surprised them both. "Will you come back tomorrow to teach me more about space?" Keisha looked into his eager, intelligent eyes and made a decision that would transform both their lives forever. "If your daddy says it's okay, I'll come back tomorrow." That evening, Robert Harrison sat in his study, staring at the reassembled puzzle that Keisha had left on his desk with a simple note: "Your son is extraordinary. He just needs someone who believes in him. Keisha Williams." For the first time in years, Robert really looked at what his son was capable of. He saw the complex problem-solving, the advanced spatial reasoning, the sophisticated understanding of scientific concepts. How had he missed this? How had dozens of expensive specialists missed this? Robert immediately activated his vast network. Within an hour, he had contacted Dr. Elena Rodriguez at MIT, who specialized in alternative learning methods for children with disabilities. He reached out to Dr. James Patterson, a world-renowned expert in neurodiversity, who had been featured in several of his documentaries. But most importantly, Robert called his personal attorney to draft a contract that would change Keisha's life forever. The background investigation revealed Keisha's incredible character. 12 years of spotless employment records, glowing testimonials from every family she'd worked for, and a reputation for going above and beyond in every situation. More critically, it revealed her natural gift with children who had been labeled as challenging or impossible to teach. Dr. Rodriguez, whose research was funded by Harrison Media Foundation grants, immediately cleared her schedule to fly in from Boston. Dr. Patterson, who had been hoping to pitch a documentary series to Robert's network, was on the next flight from California. The most powerful media mogul in America was mobilizing his entire network to help his son. The next morning, Keisha arrived at the Harrison mansion expecting to clean as usual, only to find Robert waiting for her in the marble foyer. She braced herself for termination. In her experience, when wealthy employers wanted private conversations with the help, it rarely ended well. "Ms. Williams," Robert began, his voice thick with emotion, "I understand you spent some time with my son yesterday." "Yes, sir, Mr. Harrison. I hope that was appropriate. I know I was supposed to be cleaning, but he seemed so heartbroken, and I just couldn't walk away." "You accomplished more with my son in 2 hours than 50 specialists have achieved in 6 years, Robert interrupted, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I have a life-changing proposition for you." Robert offered Keisha a position as Daniel's full-time learning companion and developmental guide, at a salary that was more than triple what she earned from all her cleaning jobs combined. But beyond the financial security, he offered her something she had always dreamed of: the opportunity to nurture a brilliant child's potential and prove that love and belief could triumph over credentials and prejudice. "I don't have any teaching degrees," Keisha protested, overwhelmed. "I barely finished high school myself. I'm just a—" "You're exactly what my son needs," Robert said firmly, his voice carrying the authority that had built a media empire. "You saw his genius when people with doctorates couldn't. You treated him with respect when specialists treated him like a case study. Will you help us unlock my son's incredible potential?" Keisha looked through the doorway, where Daniel was waiting anxiously in his pajamas, clutching his space puzzle and watching their conversation with hopeful eyes. The trust and expectation in his gaze made her decision inevitable. "Yes, Mr. Harrison," she said with quiet determination. "I'll help Daniel shine." What unfolded over the following 8 months defied every expert prediction and shattered every preconceived notion about learning disabilities and intellectual potential. Keisha didn't follow any traditional curriculum or established teaching methodology. Instead, she built an entire educational universe around Daniel's natural curiosity and inherent strengths. They explored mathematics through his love of puzzles and patterns, discovering that Daniel could grasp complex geometric concepts and numerical relationships that challenged children twice his age. Science came alive through hands-on experiments in his grandmother's garden, where Daniel learned about plant biology, weather patterns, and ecological systems, while nurturing the vegetables and flowers he loved. History became an adventure when Keisha connected it to Daniel's fascination with space exploration. They studied ancient civilizations through their contributions to astronomy, learned about different cultures through their unique perspectives on the cosmos, and explored geography through the locations of space programs around the world. Most importantly, Keisha taught Daniel to believe in himself and advocate for his needs. She showed him how to express his thoughts clearly, how to ask for help when he needed it, and how to take pride in his unique way of understanding the world. "Your brain works differently than other people's, Daniel," Keisha would tell him daily, "and that's not a problem to be fixed. It's a gift to be celebrated. You see connections others miss. You notice details others ignore. That makes you special, not less than anyone else." The transformation became undeniable when Dr. Elena Rodriguez arrived from MIT to evaluate Daniel's progress. What she witnessed challenged every assumption she had made about Down syndrome and learning potential. Daniel presented his work to Dr. Rodriguez with confidence and articulation that left everyone speechless. His portfolio included detailed scientific observations about plant growth patterns, mathematical calculations related to space distances, research about different countries' space programs, and artistic representations of astronomical phenomena that demonstrated both technical accuracy and creative vision. The most powerful moment came when Daniel presented his culminating project, a comprehensive plan for a children's space education center that would make astronomy accessible to kids with all types of learning differences. The proposal included detailed facility designs, educational program outlines, accessibility features, and budget projections. It was the work of someone who understood both the technical aspects of education and the emotional needs of children who learn differently. This isn't just impressive for a child with special needs. Dr. Rodriguez continued, her voice filled with awe. This is visionary work that could revolutionize how we teach science to all children. Daniel has created something that could genuinely transform educational approaches nationwide. Word of Daniel's incredible transformation began spreading through Robert's vast media network. The same specialists who had dismissed Daniel as unteachable now wanted to study his progress and claim credit for his success. Dr. Ashford, who had so cruelly destroyed his puzzle, called repeatedly, requesting interviews and offering to document his remarkable recovery. Robert's response was swift and public. At the annual National Education Summit, broadcast live on his network to millions of viewers, he presented Daniel's story as a powerful indictment of educational prejudice and a celebration of human potential. "My son was failed not by his disability, but by a system that couldn't see past his diagnosis to his extraordinary gifts," Robert announced to the assembled education leaders, policymakers, and millions of television viewers. Keisha Williams, a woman with no formal teaching credentials but unlimited wisdom and compassion, achieved what 50 specialists could not. She saw my son as a complete human being with unique talents, not as a collection of deficits to be remedied. The presentation led to immediate and sweeping changes in how children with disabilities were assessed and educated throughout the country. Robert established the Keisha Williams Institute for Alternative Learning, providing full funding for innovative educators who showed exceptional ability to connect with students that traditional methods had abandoned. Dr. Ashford's cruel treatment of Daniel became a case study in education programs nationwide, serving as a powerful reminder of the damage that prejudice and low expectations could inflict on vulnerable children. Her professional reputation suffered significantly when the story gained national attention, and she was eventually removed from her university position. 1 year after their first meeting, Keisha and Daniel had developed an educational partnership that had transformed both their lives completely. Daniel was now reading at a 6th grade level, had mastered mathematical concepts typically taught in middle school, and most importantly, had become a confident, articulate young man who understood his own worth and potential. The Children's Space Education Center had become a reality, with Robert providing full funding and Daniel serving as the primary consultant and junior director. The Daniel Harrison Discovery Center now served thousands of children throughout Connecticut, providing hands-on space education specifically designed for children with learning differences. Keisha had enrolled in college with Robert's full financial support, pursuing a degree in special education while continuing to work with Daniel. But beyond the professional development, she had discovered her true calling in life. She had learned that her ability to see potential in children was exactly what the world desperately needed. The relationship between Robert and Daniel had been completely transformed as well. For the first time since his wife's death, Robert came home every evening excited to hear about his son's discoveries and adventures. Father and son now spent weekends working together in the garden, planning new projects and discussing Daniel's dreams for the future. Keisha didn't just teach me about space and science, Daniel told his father one evening as they watched the stars from their garden. She taught me that being different isn't something to be ashamed of. It's something that makes me special and helps me see things other people can't see. The story of Daniel and Keisha quickly became a national phenomenon. Major news outlets featured their journey, and it became a powerful catalyst for discussions about inclusive education, the danger of limited expectations, and the importance of recognizing diverse forms of intelligence. Keisha was invited to speak at education conferences across the country, sharing her philosophy that every child possesses unique gifts that can flourish when met with genuine respect and unwavering belief. Her presentations always centered on the same fundamental truth. Don't focus on what a child can't do. Discover what they can do and build an entire world around those strengths. Daniel became a young advocate for children with disabilities, using his growing communication skills to speak at events and his space center as a model for inclusive educational environments. His confidence and articulation had developed to the point where he was comfortable addressing large audiences alongside Keisha. Robert's media empire began producing a groundbreaking documentary series called Hidden Genius, featuring children with disabilities who had been underestimated by traditional systems, but had flourished when their unique gifts were recognized and nurtured. The series won multiple awards and changed public perception about intellectual disabilities nationwide. 2 years after that first meeting in the playroom, 10-year-old Daniel Harrison had become 12-year-old Daniel Harrison, a confident, articulate young man with dreams that reached to the stars. His educational progress had far exceeded every expert prediction. But more importantly, he had developed an unshakable belief in his own potential and worth. At the grand opening of the second Daniel Harrison Discovery Center, Daniel stood at the podium before an audience of hundreds, including educators, politicians, and families affected by disabilities. His speech brought tears to the eyes of everyone present, including the many specialists who had traveled from across the country to witness his remarkable journey. 2 years ago, I believed what the doctors and teachers told me about what I couldn't do, Daniel said, his young voice clear and strong across the auditorium. I thought my Down syndrome made me broken or stupid, but Keisha Williams taught me that my brain just works differently, and different doesn't mean worse. It means special. Keisha sat in the front row, beaming with maternal pride as she watched the little boy she had nurtured blossom into a confident young advocate. Beside her, Robert wiped away tears of joy as he witnessed his son's transformation from a withdrawn, defeated child to an inspiring young leader with unlimited potential. Today, I'm not standing here despite my disability, Daniel continued, his words echoing through the silent auditorium. I'm standing here because of the special gifts that come with who I am, and I want to help other kids discover their special gifts too, just like Keisha helped me discover mine. As Daniel's story spread across social media and news outlets, something remarkable began happening in schools and homes across the nation. Parents of children with disabilities started sharing their own stories of educational struggles and breakthroughs. Teachers began questioning their assumptions about student capabilities, and administrators started implementing policy changes based on Daniel's success model. The hashtag #BelieveInEveryChild became a viral movement, with thousands of educators, parents, and advocates sharing videos of children with disabilities achieving goals that others had deemed impossible. Keisha found herself at the center of this movement, receiving hundreds of messages daily from families desperate for hope and guidance. She began hosting virtual workshops, teaching parents and teachers how to identify and nurture the unique strengths in every child. Robert's media empire expanded the impact even further by creating a scholarship fund for unconventional educators like Keisha, people with natural gifts for connecting with children but lacking traditional credentials. The fund provided full education and training for hundreds of individuals, creating a new generation of teachers who understood that the heart often matters more than the degree. Today, the Daniel Harrison Discovery Centers operate in 12 states, serving thousands of children with learning differences. Keisha Williams has become one of the most influential voices in special education, consulting with school districts nationwide to transform their approaches to students with disabilities. But perhaps most importantly, Daniel has become living proof that when we see children for who they truly are, rather than limiting them by our assumptions and prejudices, miraculous transformations become possible. His Space Center has inspired similar programs worldwide. His advocacy work has influenced federal education policy, and his story continues to change minds and hearts wherever it's shared. The journey that began with Dr. Ashford's cruel rejection has become a powerful testament to the extraordinary potential that exists within every child, waiting to be discovered by someone with the wisdom to look beyond labels and see the beautiful, unique human being underneath. Daniel Harrison is now 12 years old. He manages his own educational programs at the Discovery Center, speaks regularly at conferences about disability rights, and is working on a children's book about space exploration. He still works puzzles every day, but now his puzzle-solving skills are recognized as evidence of his analytical intelligence, rather than dismissed as meaningless play. And Keisha Williams? She recently received her bachelor's degree in special education, graduating summa cum laude, with Robert and Daniel cheering from the audience. But she still insists that Daniel taught her far more than she ever taught him. He taught me that the greatest gift we can give a child is the unshakable belief in their potential, Keisha says. When you truly see a child, really see them for who they are, you can help them discover abilities they never knew they possessed. Within 3 years of Daniel's transformation, over 500 schools nationwide had implemented what became known as the Daniel Method, an approach to special education that focused on strengths rather than deficits. Children who had been written off as unteachable were suddenly thriving, discovering talents in everything from music and art to mathematics and science. The approach proved so successful that it began being applied to all students, not just those with disabilities. Regular education teachers found that when they looked for each child's unique gifts, instead of focusing on their weaknesses, classroom engagement and academic performance improved dramatically across the board. Perhaps most importantly, Daniel himself had become a beacon of hope for families worldwide. His weekly video blogs about life with Down syndrome, his space discoveries, and his advocacy work had garnered millions of followers. Children with disabilities around the world found courage in his story, and parents found hope in seeing what was truly possible when a child was seen, believed in, and loved unconditionally. Today, the Daniel Harrison Discovery Centers operate in 12 states, serving thousands of children with learning differences. Keisha Williams has become one of the most influential voices in special education, consulting with school districts nationwide to transform their approaches to students with disabilities. But perhaps most importantly, Daniel has become living proof that when we see children for who they truly are, rather than limiting them by our assumptions and prejudices, miraculous transformations become possible. His Space Center has inspired similar programs worldwide. His advocacy work has influenced federal education policy, and his story continues to change minds and hearts wherever it's shared. The journey that began with Dr. Ashford's cruel rejection has become a powerful testament to the extraordinary potential that exists within every child, waiting to be discovered by someone with the wisdom to look beyond labels and see the beautiful, unique human being underneath. Daniel Harrison is now 12 years old. He manages his own educational programs at the Discovery Center, speaks regularly at conferences about disability rights, and is working on a children's book about space exploration. He still works puzzles every day, but now his puzzle-solving skills are recognized as evidence of his analytical intelligence rather than dismissed as meaningless play. And Keisha Williams, she recently received her bachelor's degree in special education, graduating summa cum laude with Robert and Daniel cheering from the audience. But she still insists that Daniel taught her far more than she ever taught him. He taught me that the greatest gift we can give a child is the unshakable belief in their potential, Keisha says. When you truly see a child, really see them for who they are, you can help them discover abilities they never knew they possessed. Today, as Daniel prepares for his 13th birthday, he often reflects on that painful day when Dr. Ashford broke his puzzle and told him he was hopeless. That moment of cruelty had actually become the catalyst for a transformation that would impact millions of lives. What was meant to destroy him had instead revealed his incredible strength and launched a movement that continues to grow every day. Keisha, now pursuing her master's degree in special education while still working closely with Daniel, often says that the broken puzzle pieces that day were like seeds scattered across the marble floor, each one growing into something beautiful and meaningful. The Daniel Harrison Discovery Centers now operate in 18 states. The Scholarship Fund has trained over 1,000 alternative educators, and the policy changes inspired by Daniel's story have improved educational outcomes for countless children. But perhaps the most beautiful part of this ongoing story is that Daniel has never forgotten the importance of his grandmother's garden. Every morning, he still tends to the plants she started, talking to them about his dreams and plans. And every evening, he waters them with the same gentle care that Keisha had shown him, proving that when we plant seeds of belief and nurture them with love, they can grow into something more magnificent than we ever imagined possible. The little boy who was once told he was hopeless had become hope itself for millions of others. If this story has touched your heart, if you believe that every child deserves to have their potential recognized and celebrated, regardless of their disabilities, then share it with everyone in your life. Subscribe to our channel for more stories that remind us of the extraordinary possibilities that exist when we choose to see the best in every child. Remember, Daniel Harrison, the next time you encounter a child who seems different or challenging. Remember Keisha Williams, the next time you have the opportunity to believe in a child that others have given up on. And remember that the most powerful force in education is not degrees or credentials, but the simple act of seeing a child with respect, compassion, and unshakable faith in their unlimited potential. Type yes in the comments if you believe every child has something extraordinary to offer the world. Tell us about a time when someone believed in you when others didn't, or when you chose to believe in a child's potential when others had lost hope. Because this isn't just Daniel's story or Keisha's story. It's a reminder that every single day we have the opportunity to be the person who sees potential where others see problems, who offers hope where others offer limitations, and who changes a young life simply by choosing to believe in their infinite possibilities. The world needs more people like Keisha Williams. The question is, will you be one of them?